I didn't expect much. Just a few faces around the table, some laughter, a shared meal. I'd started preparing the night before, slow and steady. The carrot cake recipe was the one Henry used to love, moist spiced just right, with cream cheese frosting, thick enough to hold a candle. I sliced the carrots by hand. Didn't trust the food processor anymore. It always made things too fine. Some things were better left imperfect. The table took longer. I unfolded the embroidered cloth with shaking fingers, smoothing it over the worn oak with my palm, like I was erasing the years from its surface. I laid out 10 plates, evenly spaced, each one with a cloth napkin I had pressed that morning. Pink, with tiny stitched roses in the corners, the ones I only ever brought out on birthdays. I lit the candles one by one at 5:30, even though the dinner wasn't until 6. Old habit. Better early than late. I double-checked the oven, adjusted the dining chairs, added the ceramic salt holder I knew Sandra liked near her spot. Then I sat and waited. At first I told myself they were just running late. Then I thought maybe they were planning a surprise, coming in all together with balloons and noise. I even fixed my hair in the reflection of the microwave door just in case. But 7 o'clock came. Then 8. The frosting had begun to sweat under the warm kitchen lights. I picked up my phone. Nothing. No messages, no missed calls. I opened the group thread Craig had created months ago for family updates. It was filled with silence. I opened Sandra's page instead. There it was. A carousel of filtered images, her in oversized sunglasses, Craig in linen, the kids in matching swimsuits, champagne in hand. Ocean stretched out behind them, infinite and blue. The caption read, "Family time is priceless. Grateful for this unforgettable gift." My stomach dropped. They hadn't forgotten. They'd gone without me. I stared at the photos, scanning every face. Even the kids looked radiant. I'd paid for that cruise. Craig had come by with the paperwork weeks ago, said it would be easier if I just used my account directly. It's a family trip, he'd said. We'll make the most of it. When I'd asked if I should pack a bag, he chuckled. Too much walking, Mom. You'd hate it. I clicked the phone screen off and placed it face down beside the cake. The candles had burned low, the wicks curling inward. Wax dripped onto the tablecloth I had just pressed this morning. The pink napkins still sat untouched around 10 perfect plates. The message came in just as I was shutting down my computer. Plans changed. Don't come. No punctuation. No context. Just 4 words from my father sitting stark at the top of the screen, like they were meant to end a conversation we hadn't started. I stared at them, rereading twice, then a third time. I had a box on my desk gift-wrapped in silver paper with a pale ribbon. Inside was a bracelet I'd found on Etsy, delicate hand-stamped with 76 and still rising. I'd picked it out a month ago thinking she'd smile when she read it, thinking someone should. Something felt wrong. Off. Dad wasn't one to cancel anything last minute, not without a reason, and especially not without a flurry of excuses about traffic or work. I checked the time, 4:41. Her dinner was at 6. I hadn't RSVP'd in the thread, just told her I'd come after work. I picked up my phone and called her directly. It rang longer than it should have. I was about to hang up when she answered. Hello. Her voice was soft. Small. Grandma? It's me. Emery. Are you okay? There was a pause, then a brittle little laugh. Of course, sweetheart. I'm fine. Don't worry. You must be so busy with work. I sat back in my chair. I got a message from Dad. He said not to come. What's going on? Another pause. Then they're not coming. Something came up. My chest tightened. What do you mean they're not coming? She hesitated. I must have gotten the days mixed up. You didn't. I probably overdid it again. It's not a big deal. Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't say anything for a moment, afraid my own voice might crack too. I looked down at the RSVP card for my promotion dinner, still sitting untouched on the corner of my desk. Tonight I was supposed to give a toast. My manager had even pre-written a joke for me to open with. I reached for the card, held it between my fingers for a beat, then tore it in half. I slipped the bracelet into my coat pocket and stood not bothering to shut down the monitor this time. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just grabbed my keys and headed straight for her. By the time I pulled onto her street, the sky had already slipped into that gray-blue hush between evening and night. Most porch lights were on. Theirs wasn't. I parked at the curb and sat in the stillness for a moment, hands on the steering wheel trying to steady my breathing. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. I just knew I needed to get here. Her front steps creaked the way they always had. When I reached the window by the kitchen, I peered through the sheer curtain. She was there, seated at the head of the table, her back straight. Her hands folded gently in her lap. 10 plates still set. Pink napkins like little flags of hope. The cake sat untouched in the center. The candles had burned nearly to stubs, wax puddling around the base. She wasn't crying. She wasn't doing anything. Just sitting in the quiet, as if still waiting for someone to ring the bell. I knocked gently, not wanting to startle her. She turned toward the door but didn't rise. I let myself in. She smiled when she saw me. "Oh, Emery, I told you not to bother." I set my bag down and walked to the table. "Too late for that." She waved a hand, trying for casual. "There's cake if you'd like some." I nodded and sat across from her. Her fork was untouched. I reached for the knife, sliced us both a piece. The cake was beautiful layers of orange flecked with spice, but cold now. The cream cheese frosting had hardened at the edges. "Happy birthday," I said, quietly setting a plate in front of her. She smiled again, barely. "You didn't have to come." I took a bite. It was dry at the edges, but sweet. Familiar. She picked up her fork, and I saw it, just the slightest tremble in her hand. She tried to hide it by steadying her elbow on the table, but I noticed. I didn't say anything. We ate in silence for a while, each of us pretending we weren't pretending. Then I looked up and saw her eyes flick toward the hallway. Briefly, almost involuntarily, something about it made me follow her gaze. That was when I saw the corner of a wooden box tucked halfway beneath the side table, its edge dusty, its lid slightly askew. She caught me looking before I could ask. Her fork clinked softly against the plate as she set it down, then folded her napkin over the half-eaten slice of cake. "That old box," she said, eyes lowered. "It's just full of papers. Nothing important." I waited a beat. "Tax papers." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood slowly, as if the movement took more out of her than it should have, and walked toward the sink. I followed her with my eyes not moving. She rinsed her fork under cool water and let it rest on the counter, both hands bracing the edge. Her shoulders rose, then dropped, like she was gathering courage just to speak. "Craig brought over some documents a while back," she said. "Said they were for taxes. Said he'd taken care of everything so I wouldn't have to worry." I stood moved beside her. What kind of documents? I didn't read them. I trusted him. Her voice cracked, but only slightly. I reached for a dish towel, offered it. She didn't take it. "I don't even know where the deed is now," she whispered. A cold ripple ran down my back. "Grandma," I said gently, "can we sit down for a second?" She nodded, and I helped her to the living room. She moved slower than I remembered, her legs stiff from sitting too long. I guided her to the armchair by the window. The room smelled faintly of old wood and lavender cleaner. As she sank into the cushion, I knelt by the side table, where the corner of that box still peeked out, like something half forgotten, half hidden. My fingers brushed the edge. Dust clung to my skin. "Don't," she said suddenly, sharper than before. I turned to her. She wasn't angry. She looked afraid. "Grandma," I said softly, "what is it?" She stared at the box. It's just, some things are easier not to look at. I paused, then reached again. Her voice dropped. I should have said no, but I didn't. And now I don't even know what I gave up. I slid the box out, carefully, set it between us on the floor. The latch was stiff, but not locked, just unused. It creaked open with a dry sigh, and inside were papers stacked haphazardly, some yellowed, others crisp. One thick envelope rested on top, sealed with handwriting I recognized immediately. The envelope was thicker than the others. Its edges yellowed, the flap sealed tight with a brittle line of glue. Across the front in dark ink was my grandfather's handwriting, precise, slanted, unmistakably his. Last Will and Testament, Henry Whitmer. I looked over at her. Lorraine didn't meet my eyes. She stared at her lap, her fingers knotted together. I peeled the seal slowly, careful not to tear the paper. Inside was the original will, dated notarized and signed. Every page was in order, every word clear. The house, the 2 rental properties, the savings account he'd left behind. All of it was to remain with Lorraine fully and without condition. And below, stapled to the final page, a short, handwritten note. It was addressed to her. If for any reason I pass first, and you find yourself unsure, trust no one without your own counsel. You know who they are. Be cautious, especially if they use the word help. I read it twice, then again. The message was blunt but loving. He hadn't trusted Craig. He hadn't trusted Sandra. He'd seen something coming, and still somehow it happened anyway. There was a final clause at the bottom. If Lorraine were to pass and no secondary directive was filed, the estate would go to the next named heir. My name, Emery Whitmer. Not Craig. Not Sandra. I looked up. Did you know about this? She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely there. I did. I thought it would make things worse if I told anyone. I didn't want them fighting. I didn't want to be the reason things fell apart. They already did, I said. She closed her eyes. You're still the legal owner, I continued. They've been acting like it's theirs, but it's not. Nothing's been transferred. Not officially. She seemed smaller now, not because of age, but because of guilt. I should have said something when Craig started asking me to sign things. I should have, but you didn't, I said gently. And now we're here. She nodded slowly. I folded the will back into the envelope and tucked it into my bag. The box still held more papers, bank slips, medical records, and a scattering of utility bills, but none of them held the same weight. This was it. This was the line in the sand. And just as I stood to return the box beneath the table, her phone lit up across the room. A new message. The screen blinked bright, just long enough for me to read the preview. You should tell her to leave before she makes this worse. The post went up before sunrise. Sandra's smiling face whined in her hair, a glass of champagne raised to the sky. The caption was short-barbed. Funny how people show up when inheritance is involved. By the time I saw it, the comments had already started piling up. Names I recognized. Church people. Neighbors. Even my former chemistry teacher from high school. That's so sad. Hope the family gets through this. Always drama when money's involved. Some grandkids only remember you when there's a check. I didn't respond. I didn't even open the app again after that. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't get twisted. They were already telling the story they needed to believe. Instead, I sat across from Lorraine at her kitchen table while she drank her morning tea, hands trembling just slightly over the cup. I pulled out a notebook, a pen, and made a list. Bank. Property records. Elder law attorney. Health proxy review. I didn't ask for her permission. I didn't need to. That afternoon, I walked across the street to the old green house with the sagging porch. Mr. Poe answered the door in his usual flannel eyebrows raised. You've been watching, I said. He gave a quiet nod. I found the will. His eyes narrowed slightly. And I need a witness. Not for court, just for truth. He didn't hesitate. I'll speak. When I stepped back outside, the wind had picked up a little. The leaves along the sidewalk spun in uneven spirals. I turned toward the bank downtown envelope clutched under one arm. Just as I passed the end of the block, I heard him call after me. About time someone did. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I had one more appointment that day, one that would determine whether we could take this further, whether we had enough. I pushed open the heavy glass door of the attorney's office and stepped into the stillness inside. They filed the motion within a week. Craig argued that I had coerced Lorraine, that I had inserted myself during a vulnerable moment, that she didn't understand what she was signing, that I was after her money, her house, her future. He used the word unstable 3 times in the first paragraph of the complaint. Ms. Geller, the attorney I'd met with, said not to panic. This is posturing, she told me. They're trying to scare you out of action. But it worked. I was scared. Still, we prepared. We organized documents, tracked signatures, collected statements. Mr. Poe agreed to come in person. Ms. Geller found the original notarized will and helped me file for emergency guardianship just days before the hearing. The courtroom was small, too warm. Lorraine sat beside me, bundled in her soft blue cardigan, hands resting on her lap. She didn't speak much that morning, only nodded when I asked if she wanted tea and blinked slowly when I helped her put on her shoes. Craig arrived wearing a charcoal suit and a smirk. Sandra sat behind him, arms folded, sunglasses perched on her head like she was at brunch. When the judge asked Craig to speak, he stood and delivered his lines with polished restraint. He painted himself as a concerned son, said he'd been managing Lorraine's affairs for years, said I had swooped in for selfish reasons. His voice even cracked when he described her decline. Ms. Geller didn't flinch. She handed over the will. She read aloud the final clause where I was listed as secondary heir. She played the audio file of Lorraine's last medical evaluation, stable, aware, independent, in daily function. Mr. Poe stepped up and quietly told the court that Lorraine had been isolated, misled, and dismissed. But none of it seemed to move the judge. He leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitmer," he said, "do you understand where you are today?" Lorraine didn't answer at first. She looked around, eyes glassy, uncertain. Then she looked at me, and something cleared. "She's the only one who came," she said. No one moved. Not the clerk. Not the bailiff. Craig's jaw tensed, but he stayed silent. The judge sat back slowly. His voice shifted. "Guardianship remains with Emery Whitmer," he said. "And I will be issuing an inquiry into the financial transfers initiated under Mr. Whitmer's oversight." Sandra stood first. Craig followed stiff. Neither looked back as they left. I stayed where I was, one hand on Lorraine's shoulder, feeling her lean into it just enough to let me know she understood. Outside, reporters waited for someone to speak. But I didn't. I walked Lorraine to the car, the paperwork clutched in my hand, and drove her home in silence. When we reached the front steps, I noticed something wedged in the mailbox, a plain envelope with no return address. The envelope from the mailbox contained no threats, no signatures, no letterhead, just a single sheet of paper folded twice. Inside, a sentence scribbled in blue ink, Craig's handwriting unmistakable. "She's your problem now." I didn't show it to Lorraine. Instead, I tucked it into the drawer beneath the phone, where old pens and expired coupons lived. It didn't deserve a place anywhere else. In the weeks that followed, no one came by. No calls, no posts, no more courthouse motions. Craig and Sandra disappeared into the digital fog. Their last public post, a family dinner captioned, "Choosing Peace." Vera didn't resurface. Whatever they'd hoped to win, they lost in silence. Lorraine didn't ask where they went. She spent most mornings in the recliner, her blue cardigan wrapped tight, a mug of tea in hand. Some days she remembered what had happened. Other days, not so much. But she always smiled when I sat beside her, like that part of her still recognized something safe. I started small. The first photo I took down was of Sandra, one of those staged portraits where everyone smiles just wide enough to look like they belong. I replaced it with an old snapshot I found in the bottom of Lorraine's drawer, her and Henry sitting on the hood of a rusted Chevy, a picnic basket between them, his arm around her waist. She was barefoot laughing. Then came the rest. The heavy frames with Craig's achievements, the forced Christmas photos, all boxed and sealed. I didn't throw them out, but I didn't leave them up. I made calls, 2 quiet ones. A cousin in Austin, another in Oregon. People who hadn't known what happened. Some were ashamed. Some were grateful. A few came to visit. They didn't bring gifts, just themselves. Lorraine didn't always remember their names, but she lit up when they walked through the door. I stopped chasing explanations. I stopped explaining myself. The house became quieter, but lighter, her space again. One evening, after Lorraine had fallen asleep in the recliner, I walked into the kitchen alone. The counters were clean, the cake stand empty. I opened the drawer, pulled out a single candle from the half-used pack she'd saved for years. I stuck it in the center of a muffin, lit it, and stood there for a while. "Happy birthday," I whispered. Not because it was her birthday, but because I hadn't said it properly before. Because that night, she sat alone, she still believed someone might show up. And someone did. I blew out the candle. The wick smoked for a moment, then went still. Later that week, Lorraine asked if I could bring down the box from the hallway closet, the one she hadn't touched in years. She said there was something inside she'd been meaning to show me.